personal profile that Dr. David Lincoln holds. So I'm going to be trying my best to make it a very concise format, just to understand and respect the time limitations we all have here. So something about Dr. David. I'll start with a very famous quote of Dr. Albert Einstein, that it is only source of knowledge is experience. So continuing with that same token, so an account that we have within us a man who is not only full of experience, but a lot of wisdom and knowledge. So it's a true honor we hold to have you with us, Dr. David. So I'm going to please allow me to give a short introduction about you. So Dr. David has a very elaborative and extremely impressive career, and his personal profile and educational certifications are only many of us can have aspirations about. Dr. David has been in the field of psychology for more than 50 years now, and he has been playing versatile roles in several divergent environments. Dr. David has been working in several countries, predominantly in the UK, United States of America, and also India. And Dr. David has this incredible, this nucleus of all that he has been doing in his life and continues to do so. The fulcrum, the nucleus remains that the mind-body connection. So it is a mind-body connection. So Dr. David believes that all the health challenges that people face have this very important psychological component, even though it is not very obvious. So if we all people begin to think differently, we can not only create good health for us, but also a wonderful and a very profound and strong level of quality of life. So Dr. David has, so keeping this into consideration of the psychological needs of today. So Dr. David has founded this company called as NLP Goa to meet all the psychological education sustaining. So NLP Goa is the company that Dr. David is the founder member and the president of. And Dr. David also has been an advisor and the program compiler in the fields of neuro-linguistic programming and psychology, psychotherapy for various Fortune 500 companies and all across the world. So what's the bond that connects, that joins and connects us with Dr. David today is the bond of NLP. So Dr. David has been in NLP for more than 20 years now. So he continues to do so. He continues to serve people, to certify people, to educate people on this field of psychology and neuro-linguistic programming. Till date, he conducts all the certifications of NLP, from practitioners to train the trainers, the certifications, along with master trainer certifications. So, and his career and personal profile, if I were to read it completely, I'm sure Dr. David and everybody that this 1 hour would be far too less to encompass and comprise all that incredible and impressive career that you've had. So without further ado, I would call upon Dr. David, and to all my fellow members and friends, let us fasten our seatbelts. And the weather condition is at an optimum temperature with very clear blue skies. Dr. David leading this plane. So let us all, without further ado, welcome Dr. David for his wonderful words of wisdom.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. And with such a wonderful introduction, Ravi, I'm sort of looking forward to speaking to this Dr. David. He sounds like quite an interesting character. Um, Good. So I understand that all of you have at least dipped your toe into the water that is NLP, and hopefully this will be the start of something long, interesting, and rewarding for you all. Let me just mention that Ravi is on what we call the master trainer track. That means that he's one of the select trainers in India that has been decided could have the potential of being a master trainer. Now, ANLP, or the Association of Neuro Linguistic Programming India, is the certifying body for NLP in India. I have to say it's not the only certifying body, but it is in fact the largest certifying body, with now in excess of 10,000 members. And if you'd like to join ANLP India, it's completely free and we don't spam you. In fact, I don't think I've sent emails to our members for several years, but you can join it simply by going to ANLP.in. That's the Association of Neuro-Linguistic Programming.in. And there you'll come and become a member with thousands of others. Now, out of the several thousand members and the many, many thousand people that have done NLP in India, there's less than 100 trainers, of which Ravi is one of them. Now, you think, oh, 100, that's a lot of trainers. But when you think of the population of India of being, 1.3 billion, 100 isn't so many. And they are spread all over India. And of course, there's also a good possibility that any one of you, or more than one of you, may well become a trainer in the future if you stick with your NLP. Now, NLP, like anything else that you learn, gets better with practice. But the great thing about NLP is you don't need anybody's help to practice it. You can practice it yourself. And one of the key items of NLP is the middle bit, the linguistic. And part of the linguistic is listening to what other people say and listening to what, not only what they say, but what do they actually mean behind what they say? What's actually going on in somebody's head? So you could say that NLP is the closest thing that you're ever going to get to mind reading somebody. I don't know any better mind reading skill that's available, because when people talk, they give away a lot of information about themselves. And for you to understand this, you have to listen very intently to what they say. And also, and probably more importantly, what they don't say. It's not just what somebody says that gives us something away, it's what they don't say. Now, I think, Ravi, I think most of them have studied NLP. So you're probably aware of the rather boring subject in NLP called linguistic presuppositions. And that rather long list of items that you think, boring. But let me tell you that that is the backbone of NLP. The backbone is what people say and understanding what that person means by what they say. I can tell you that the vast majority of arguments, disagreements, etc., come from a misunderstanding of what the person says. And this is not just one-to-one misunderstandings, but countries' misunderstandings. I mean, at the moment, India is going through a big misunderstanding with China, and China's going through an even bigger misunderstanding with America. So all of this comes from not really understanding what people say. So there is your base of neural linguistic programming is the language. Now, going on from that, of course, there are a lot of clever little techniques that you can do to help somebody change their thinking. In fact, I have to tell you that John Grinder, as you know, is one of the founders of NLP. He doesn't talk about NLP practitioners or master practitioners. He uses a very simple and different term. He calls all his people that have done NLP as agents of change. Agents of change, because that's what you become. You help other people to change, sometimes even in spite of themselves. Now, let me just add to this, this idea of change, is that you cannot change another person unless they want change and they ask you for change. The person that you can change all the time is yourself. And you'll find quite a miraculous thing is that when you change, people around you change. You know, if you're in war with somebody, I mean that metaphorically, you know, you're arguing and you're not liking somebody, say a neighbor or somebody at work or something. And if you suddenly change and start to tolerate or even like that other person, you'll find that that other person will change as well. So change first in yourself. And then another thing I'd like to mention is that if you're working with somebody or yourself and that person or you has a problem. I have a problem. This is often people come up to you and say, oh, you're an NLP person. I have a problem. So if somebody has a problem, what else do they have? And the answer to that is very simple. They have the solution. You don't have the solution. I don't know any of your problems or the solutions to any of your problems, but I do know that you have the solution. So by good rapport, you remember rapport, good rapport with that person and some well-asked questions will help that person find their own solution. And then they will think you're a miracle worker. They say, oh, you're so clever, you're so fantastic. I've now solved this problem that I had all my life. Does the change in one's own self essentially change? Well, it's just somebody threw a question in there just to change the strategies and others. Well, yes, in a way, it changes the strategy of how that person reacts with you. That's what happens. You know, everybody likes to be around nice, friendly, happy people that don't go around criticizing and finding the bad in everybody. So if you're one of those people, you'll find your popularity increases. You know, there's enough people in this world going around saying, this is wrong, that's wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong. So if you're not saying that, and if you're picking out the nice things in everybody, they will react with you accordingly. You know, there's an old saying that says, what you give is what you get. Or one of the ways we say it in England is, how you lie, how you make your bed is so shall you lie. It has the same meaning. Whatever you give out is what you get in. And if you're giving out negative and nasty things, then that's what you're going to receive. So NLP helps you to control what we call your state. Your state is how you feel, your emotions. Okay? Now, it could be said that everything you do is dependent on your state. If your state feels fantastic and I want to go out and make a lot of money, then you'll go out and make a lot of money. But if your state feels, well, I'm all right, but I don't think I'll ever make any money, then guess what? You won't make any money. So everything you do is dependent on your state. And you'll probably have observed in several of the NLP processes you would have done are all about making yourself feel right for what you're doing. In NLP terms, we often call that anchoring a state to yourself. And there are several processes. You may have done a circle of excellence, or you've done general anchoring and such forth. And these are ways of making you feel good. Now, what Ravi mentioned briefly is this thing called the mind-body connection. And the mind-body connection is much more powerful than you will at first realize. If you have any medical training of any description, you'll know that the reaction that the patient has to an illness will be a direct measurement of how quickly that illness is going to resolve itself. Because, you know, if you think yourself ill, you become ill. If you think yourself well, then you become well. It's really almost as simple as that, because there are massive connections. I mean, for example, there are two major nerves that come from your head and wrap round your heart. And there's been some experimentation where divers have actually thought to lower their heart rate, and the thought process has actually been measured to lower their heart rate. I can do this. I suffer from something which is commonly known as white coat syndrome. And what this means is that when somebody in a white coat, i.e. a medic of some description, comes to take my blood pressure, it always goes up. And I have to tell them, they say, oh, your blood pressure is high. I said, well, just hang on a minute. I suffer from white coat syndrome. Just give me 5 minutes. And I sit there and I relax and I meditate. I said, now take it again. And 5 minutes later, guess what? It's back to normal. Now, this I know about. It's something I've had all my life, this white coat syndrome. Some of you may call it slightly different, like dental phobia. You know, when you go to the dentist, you immediately think, oh my God, I'm going to have pain. But nowadays, there's no pain. I mention that specifically and deliberately because on Tuesday, I'm going to the dentist and I'm having 2 major implants put on both sides of my mouth. I know there's not going to be any pain, but I'll definitely have a little bit of dentophobia when I arrive, you know, a little bit of shaking, but I'll be able to calm myself down and relax and get in that chair, relax, close my eyes and say, wake me up when you've finished. That's a sort of a form of self-hypnosis. So you can use all of your NLP in all sorts of different ways. And constantly learning new techniques, new ways of doing things. And you know, we have another old saying in NLP, and it goes like this, is that if you do something to somebody and it works, we call it NLP.
NLP.
If you do something to somebody that doesn't work, we'll call it law of attraction, anything you like, whatever name you want to put onto it, you know. So NLP lays claim to everything that works. And at the heart of NLP, at the very base of NLP, is something called modeling. You may not have got into modeling yet because it's not normally taught until a slightly higher level. But modeling really is just looking at what works with other people and putting it on yourself. You see, one of the very first things you learn in NLP is rapport. Okay. Now, rapport wasn't just thought up. So, oh, let's do rapport. No, what happened was that the founders of NLP happened to notice that some people get on very well with each other and some people don't. So they looked and said, what's the difference? What are the people that are getting on well with each other doing? And what are the people that are not getting on well with each other doing? And let's see what that difference is, and let's turn it into a process. And so then you get the process of rapport building with matching and mirroring and pacing and leading and all the other things that you learn around rapport. And so everything from NLP then is looking at what works, and let's turn that into a process so that we can do it on ourselves and others, and that will also work. And this is why, to a certain extent, there's no real science behind NLP, although there is an awful lot of research, and that's available online if you're interested. But there's no real science because you can't sort of ask somebody, oh, don't get on with that person, but get on with that person and let me see the difference. It doesn't sort of work like that. But by observing what works, for example, and I'll finish on this point for you and then you can ask questions, negotiation skills. Negotiation skills that are taught in NLP have been modeled out of top negotiators, people United Nations and above, who are skillful and getting negotiations done. So they were looked at, what exactly do they do? Let's turn that into a process and let's teach that as a process in NLP. Now, I was asked by the famous Ravi to speak for 20 minutes, and I have spoken for exactly 20 minutes. And then he's going to open up for questions or ask me questions himself. So if you've got any questions that you need to ask, get them ready. I'm not frightened of any questions about anything. You can ask me anything you like. You will get an NLP answer. Okay,
Fantastic.
over to you, Ravi.
Thank you very much, Dr. David Lincoln. I think it's these 20 minutes are really, I would say, the best part of today, even though today is yet to be discovered and experienced. But having said that, there's one definite change that I feel right now, that after hearing you for these 20 minutes, my Sunday plans have been a bit altered, if not completely. That I really want to sit down and let your sounds reverberate in my brain and really resolve, or rather have this resolution to internalize every word that you've said, so that the agency of change that we talked about, the agency of change. So we being the agents of change would really fully and optimally be the advocates of this change. So thank you very much on behalf of everybody for this 20-minute talk, Dr. David Lincoln. Over to a couple of questions which I had, just to instill some more inspiration and motivation to all the new members that we have in this group. So they're all practitioners levels. None of them are master practitioners. Some of them are on their way, though. So it's like metaphorically continuing your metaphor, that since all the new NLP members that they've joined, they have now stepped into the waters of NLP. So what would be your message if we all have to let ourselves swim in these waters and also dive deeper. So what's going to be your message, Doctor?
Well, I think first and foremost, of course, is to practice what you preach. Use NLP that you know so far. And if you find that's working well, that will give you the impetus to carry on and learn more. So NLP is almost like a never-ending subject. In fact, only today, I've just finished, I've just written a new program on procrastination, basically because new research, which very modern research, has found that procrastination is actually connected with emotions, and negative emotions at that. And they may not actually be negative emotions about what you're procrastinating on. They may be negative emotions from something you did before. And so with that, I've written a new program on NLP based on anchoring to get rid of procrastination. So it never ends. It never ends. You know, if you want to be feeling good, once you feel good, you want to feel excellent. And when you feel excellent, you want to feel fantastic. And so it goes on. And NLP helps you to do that, to feel good, to feel excellent, to feel fantastic. And what's more, it helps you to help others to feel good, to feel fantastic. And I think that if the whole world felt good and fantastic, we wouldn't have a quarter of the problems that we have now. Because everybody will be feeling great, you know, and satisfied with what they've got. You won't have all these, what do they call them, the 7 deadly sins, you know, greed and lust and so on and such forth. Because all of those come from you, inside you. They don't come, you know, somebody can't come and make me greedy. Only I can make me greedy. Oh, that's a nice cake. I want another one of those, another one of those, another one of those. Before you end up, you're 10 times your size. So yes, so the message is carry on, keep going. Only carry on if it's working for you. If it's not working for you, say, great, I've done that. Now I'll go and do Gestalt therapy, or I'll go and do psychoanalytical therapy. And then you'll find you'll go through all these other therapies and all these other things. And guess where you'll end up? Back at NLP. NLP works. Okay.
Yes. So I think, yes, that encompasses everything. So all roads lead to Rome. So Dr. David Lincoln's clear message is that all road will eventually, if not in the beginning, will reach NLP. So thank you very much for that message, Doctor. Some couple of questions more, since, you know, we have the major chunk of this group particular of teachers. So they're all from one institution. And we also have our principal, the headmaster, headmistress of the school, the founder member of the school. And the whole chunk of teachers have recently finished their NLP practitioner training 3 months ago. So what's your message, Doctor, to teachers, especially since they are the creators of our fortune of our country? So they are the creators of the future leaders who are not only going to be leading our country, but throughout the globe. So what's going to be your message to teachers, Doctor?
Okay, several things. Firstly, understanding. Now, if I just refer back to a couple of the NLP presuppositions, which I'm sure you all remember. You go, oh no, I don't remember all of them. There was 34 of them, but there are some that are important, and one of those is that all behavior has purpose. And normally a positive intention. Sometimes it's written all behavior has positive intention. So whatever somebody does, that person, they do it for positive intention. You look at it as bad behavior because you can't see the positive intention that behavior is doing for that person. So just asking sometimes, why are you doing this? What's the reason why you're doing this behavior? And then you can address the reason rather than the behavior, because by addressing the behavior won't make the person change in any other way, mainly because they don't know any other way. If we look at a young child, right? A young child, I'm talking about a baby now. One of the first things they learn is that when they cry, they get attention. Now, they don't realize that first of all, because, you know, babies have three cries, what I call three cries. They have a cry of pain, a cry of hunger, and a cry of attention. Now, first of all, the first baby's cries are normally pain or hunger, but then they cry when they don't have either of those and find that mummy comes running, and so suddenly they've learned the cry of attention. And if you then immediately respond every time that baby cries, even though it's only a cry of attention, you're going to have a rather crying baby on your hands for quite a long time. Now, the similar thing happens when they're older, and even up to adults. You know, you do a certain behavior for a certain purpose. And when you do that behavior, that purpose works. So you do it again and it works. Now, that might be great at home or with your friends, but then you come into school, you do the same behavior and find it doesn't work. So you do it again. So understanding that behavior has purpose. And the second thing, of course, which is quite famous in NLP, is the learning styles of individuals. People have different learning styles, and I'm sure you've learned this with the eye patterns, you know, and whether they're visual, auditory, or kinesthetic. Now, in an average classroom setting, what you'll find is the people that sit at the front, now assuming they're able to sit where they want, the people that sit at the front of the classroom are normally visual, the people that sit in the middle are normally auditory, and the people that sit at the back are normally kinesthetic, or what I say and I call the also-rans. I'll explain that in a moment, okay? Now, why do the kinesthetics sit at the back with the also-rans? And that's because most teachers don't address the kinesthetic element of people. And so they get bored very quickly. Now, among these also-rans are highly intelligent people, because they've got it straight away, and then all the others. I don't like to put labels on them. You know, everybody loves to put labels. You know, ADHD is the great label of the day, and ADD. And they maybe just don't want to be there. They've got no interest in being there, right? So there are lots of reasons why you've got the people at the back, and I'm talking metaphorically, of course, the also-rans. So teachers, be aware of how your students learn and address all those learning abilities. A good model, by the way, is the teaching of the, oh dear, it's gone out of my head, a very good, oh, it'll come back to me in a minute anyway, a teaching style where, for example, you're teaching, say, 5-year-olds, right? And you find a 5-year-old and they putting something in their mouth like this, you see. So instead of saying to that child, take that out of the mouth, you don't know where it's been, and all the other things you might say, they go up and they say, oh, what does that taste like? Does it taste good? Get your tongue around it, have a feel. Maybe you want to stick it up your nose and see, you know. So they use all of the representational systems of the child to give them a better understanding of their world around them. And this is based on the fact, you know, if you've done any of the basic development psychology, the original analytical psychology, where you used to have the oral and the anal stage of development, if you understand this. This is now old-fashioned, of course, because it was all developed by that well-known drug addict womanizer. You know the guy I'm talking about, Dr. Sigmund Freud. Nowadays, they call this first development period the autistic period, because at the first part of a development of a child, they are not aware of anybody else. Everything is an extension of themselves, which is very similar to what autism is like. And that's why you can't actually diagnose autism in a child until they're about 3 years of age, because it's very difficult before then. So anyway, I could talk for hours about teaching, so I better stop, otherwise we'll use up all the time on teaching. So I hope that gives you a sort of a quick overview of some of the things your NLP will help you when you are teaching people.
Certainly, Dr. Lincoln, and I think even hours would be for us euphoric, and we are already tranced out, if I must say. So we have already lost all the track of time. I hope I'm correct. I can hear sounds of yes from all my fellow members here. So, Dr. David, also there was these great words that we heard, especially the metaphoric explanation about the babies. So I think even considering us as babies for the next time, even if we cry for 3 reasons, one of the 3 reasons, I'm sure we will have all the 3 reasons to hear you again soon sometimes. The reason of hunger, I'm surely there's going to be unsatiable hunger we're going to always have, and a little bit of pain of maybe missing you around. And then third is attention. So I'm sure that you are setting up a tone that that's serious, that we are definitely looking for a lot of you in the times to come. So,
don't cry, please. Stop crying.
We are, out loud, all of us together in unison. All right, Dr. David, something about doctors. The second chunk we have in this group is that we have a secondary major chunk of doctors around here, doctors, and especially more dentists. All right. Yeah. So even they might give you a couple of tips of how you can, on your Tuesday to come, can help you get better, alleviate your pain, or maybe manage it better. So what's your message to the doctors in this group, Dr. P?
Well, for all doctors, therapists, and other people that work to alleviate pain in other humans, because that's basically what the doctor's job is to do. One of the great things about NLP is that it creates wonderful, what's commonly known in doctors as the bedside manner or rapport. And by building that rapport with your patient, gives that patient more trust in you. And if the patient has trust in the medical procedure or the dental procedure that you're going to do, they will be much more relaxed and will start healing much, much quicker. Often in dentists, it's been sort of recognized, but not so much in general medical, is the nervousness of a patient. And a lot of good dentists now actually employ some of the techniques of hypnosis, or what we call in NLP trance induction, to calm their patients down before they're going to do an intervention. And in fact, there's something, and I forget what it's called now, a method that you can give an injection, and they often use it on children, where you can give an injection without the child feeling any pain. One of them, for example, is how to give an injection. You sort of play with them and stick your nails in all sorts of areas around where you're going to give the injection, and then slip the needle in suddenly when they're least expecting it. I got a feeling it's called Armstrong technique or something similar to that. So that's another area. Now, should we explore further to get that micro-niche of teachers and doctors and understand the specific challenges addressed in NLP? Well, you can. I'm just answering the question that somebody put on the chat there. You can, of course, but realize that all your NLP works in all situations, including doctors and dentists. So it's just adjusting the NLP to work. Number one, of course, is to build that trust. That's very important. In the mind-body connection, as we often talk about, you know, the mind is, or the brain, or whatever you want to call it, is the only part that can actually repair the body. Now, you will do interventions to cut out things that are causing, you know, poisons, or you're setting bones, or you're doing all this sort of thing. But the speed of healing is dependent upon the mindset of the patient. And this has been proven many, many times over lots of different experiments, we might call. One that immediately rings to mind is a group of cancer patients, serious cancer patients, and they were divided into two groups. Now, both groups got exactly the same medicine, but one group was given daily meditation classes on top of their medicine, meditation for an hour by a proper meditation teacher. And in the meta-analysis of all of that, it was noticed that those that had the meditation classes, there was a greater amount of survivors, let's put it that way. You know, people got better quicker than the other group. And that's just one of many, many experiments that have been done, where the mind-body connection is actually instigated by the doctor. You know, in I don't know what it's like here, but in Great Britain, most general practitioners have a very limited time to see the doctors. And I remember a story that one of these general practitioners told me once. He was doing NLP. And he said, most of the time, he said, I'm looking down and they come in and I say, what? And I'm writing the prescription, and then I give them the prescription and off they go. And I rarely have any time to interact with them. But he said, one day, I just thought differently, and I looked up and I looked at this person there, and I saw this person was ill. You know, I suddenly realized that, you know, he was not a mechanical monster that I just keep writing prescriptions for. And then I took 5 or 10 minutes to interact with him, and he went away feeling a lot better. And this is one of the things, you know, there are lots of different medical systems in India, more so than the rest of the world. And what's, I think, number 3, I think number 1 is allopathic, number 2 is Ayurvedic, and number 3 is homeopathy, number 4 is natural, and number 5 is naturopathic. One of the things that homeopathy, why, in my opinion, and I'm not a homeopath, but in my opinion, one of the reasons why homeopathy is so successful is that the doctor or the practitioner spends time with the patient. If you go for an average homeopathic consultation, you might be an hour in the discussion where they look at all your history and everything else. And that interaction is the healing. And you know, doctors of all descriptions at heart are healers. And healing is not necessarily giving drops of medicine. And we know this by the placebo effect. So any of you doctors will know what that means. But you know, the placebo effect is as powerful a healer as medicine is a healer. And in fact, to a certain extent, nearly all medicines are placebos. There is some active ingredient in some of them, and obviously, you know, antibiotics will kill invading bacteria, but there's also a huge amount of placebo effect. Now, there's a new term for the placebo effect, which some of you might be interested from, and I forget where it came from now, but the new term is remembered wellness. Now, think of that in NLP terms. That's anchoring. That's anchoring, you know. Remember a time when you were feeling fantastically unwell. And as you remember that, you feel fantastically unwell. So don't call it placebo, call it remembered wellness. So I hope that helps some of you doctors and dentists to apply your NLP in your everyday surgery interactions with your patients.
Fantastic, Dr. Lincoln. That was fantastic. That was really remarkable, and I hope that all the doctors who are present in this group are equally satisfied, equally inspired by this 10-minute talk on the topic relating to NLP with doctors. So, Dr. Lincoln, final question. I mean, we can't have, we can't really stop listening to your words, and I'm surprised at how 50 minutes have passed so fast. So it seems like a flash. So one of the few, I think I will take the last question for now, keeping a room for if at all we could fit in. So important note that since all these practitioners are now new in the field, in the world, in the waters of NLP, and there are so many techniques, that you have compiled, you have created the practitioner's manual. So out of all these, so many techniques for every situation every situation we face in our life. So how do we decide? This was one of the questions that came up from a discussion we recently had. How do we choose what fits best?
Okay, I can actually answer that in 4 words. And those 4 words are the one that works. It does take a little bit of experience to sort of notice what technique you're going to use, but most of the time they fall onto, if I can come back to the doctoring, they fall onto the remembered wellness, anchoring, anchoring. If you want to be in a good state, what do? You anchor yourself to a known good state, and changing your thinking. Now, if I could sum this up, and it's a little bit of stuff from the work of Eckhart Tolle, which I'm sure you've heard of, living in the now, is that if you stay in the now, you can never have a problem. All problems are either from the past or from the future. And in simple terms, that's the difference between anxiety and depression. So if you're in the now, you can't have either of those problems. So a lot of techniques are used to get you focused on the here and now, and solve your problem now from resources that you have already got. So another way of putting that in NLP terms is to connect the client to their own resources so that they can use them at the actual time that they need them. For example, you all know when you've been happy in your life, even if you're the most depressed person, there's probably some time when you were happy. You see, that the biggest difference between NLP and other methodologies is that, if you come to me depressed, I'm not interested in your depression. You're fantastic. You're doing a wonderful job of being depressed. I don't want to help you to be more depressed. But what I would be interested in is when you are not depressed. So what happens when you're not depressed? Is there a time in your life when you felt happy? What was happening then? And let's do more of that now. It's not always... again, not to knock doctors particularly, but it's not just symptom treatment. You're not treating the symptom. A psychiatrist will treat the symptom. They will give you, serotonin reuptake inhibitors to stop your depression and various other modern drugs and so on. But that doesn't, in the long run, really help. What helps is you doing things that make you happy, brings you out of that depression. And if I'm seeing you for the first time, I've no idea what makes you happy. So I have to ask you, when were you not depressed? What were you doing then? So that's, all part of the bigger picture of NLP. And what are we doing? If I can just sum that down again, And I've said it before, what you're doing is state control. You control your own state, then you help somebody control their state. A phobia cure, for example, is a state control. You know, you get a phobia and somebody immediately screams and reacts to whatever it is. That comes from somewhere. It wasn't born in them. People are not born with phobias. There's some argument about whether they're born with fear of heights, but I don't think that's true. My personal thought is no baby is born with any phobia at all. Phobias are given to them nicely by parents. Oh, don't touch that, you know, it'll bite, or touch this, you know. And then sometimes later in life, you're bitten by a dog, and then you develop a phobia of a dog. You're accidentally exposed to a spider dropping on your head during the middle of the night, and you wake up frightened, and that locks in that fear. So it's just a state. Now, if we change the state, the way you feel, we change the reaction you have with it. And so a phobia controlled in a very basic level is changing your state, making you feel good, and erasing the memory of the bad things. You know, we can all remember bad things. I'm sure you could all sit here now. I don't want you to do it, but you can all sit here now and think of all the bad things that happened to you in your life. And the more you think about all the bad things that happened to you in your life, the more you'll get depressed and start crying. You know, it's very easy. We can all do that. But wouldn't it be better to sit here now and think of all the wonderful things that have happened to us in our life? I'll just give you one final quick story on this. When I started to live in India, in Goa, which is now coming up to 15 years, I think, or maybe more. Some of my friends in England said, well, what are you going to do about the monsoon? We've got a monsoon going on at the moment, you see. And I said to them, yeah, monsoon. Yeah, I'll get wet. But you see, there is a subtle difference there, because if you know Europe and England in particular, if it rains in England in the middle of summer and you get wet, you get cold and you feel miserable. But here, it doesn't get cold, you get wet, you take your clothes off, put a new set of clothes on, great, no problem. So you don't have the misery. But there's also the mindset that goes behind that. You know, I expect rain and monsoon and I enjoy it. And sometimes we go out and have a monsoon bath. You know, when it's rainy, you just go outside and get soaking wet and then come back in and enjoy it, you know. So anyway, again, enjoy life, whatever. You can enjoy anything, you know, people do. They're amazing. You can enjoy watching an ant walk along the ground and wonder how he walks up the room, up the walls and across the ceiling and somehow disobeys the laws of gravity. And you may wonder, how the hell does he do that? You know, and so there's wonder in everything. If you want to find it, you can find wonder, pleasure, and enjoyment in absolutely anything. Good.
Couldn't have been better, Dr. Lincoln. Couldn't have been better, really. In fact, I was looking to fit in a couple of questions, but the way you've summed this all up seems to me like, you know, there can't be a better a full stop, even though I want it to be a comma. But for this 1 hour that we've had you, and every word, I assure, is really carrying a solid foundation for fundament, contemplation, and serious things for actions. So, Dr. David, on behalf of the group, I would sincerely, with true heart, thank you very much. And it was fantastic 1 hour that we spent on this fantastic Sunday, right after our Indian Independence Day. There can't be a really better beginning.
So yeah, you kicked us out. You kicked us out 72 years ago, but I'm still here. 72 years later.
And we love to have you here, by the way, unlike those times, you know, before 1947. Yeah. So yes, so we would in fact love to have you more. Yes, and not those times, of course. So, Doctor, it has been really great. And I assure you that it is said that it's not the end, it's only a beginning. So it is the caterpillar says it's the end, but for the butterfly, it's only a beginning. So, so we will carry this agency of change that you have really reinstated and reinstalled in us through your wonderful pearls of wisdom.
I
And
recommend, I recommend to everybody here that you continue your NLP journey with Ravi. You can't find yourself a better trainer. And hopefully at some time in the not too distant future, we'll find you here in Goa doing your trainer's training. And then you'll become a trainer as well. So I look forward to seeing you all sometime in the future. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you very much. Thank you. It's great to have you around and looking forward for a lot more. Thank you.
I'm going to have my lunch now. So good lunch,
Doctor.
good afternoon to everybody. And we'll speak again, I'm sure, in the future. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Rest of us, I think, can hold on for some moments. Let us have a closure discussion on what we've learned here together. So after Dr. David.